I'm a 28-year-old guy, and up until recently, life had been, well, I wouldn't say perfect, but it was normal. Nothing crazy. Just the usual hustle, trying to keep up with work, life, and all the little responsibilities that come with adulting. Then everything flipped. It all started when my dad passed away. He was never exactly the healthiest guy, and it wasn't a huge shock, but still, when it happens to you, it hits like a ton of bricks. For me, it wasn't just the loss of a parent. It was the loss of the last stable thing in my life. My dad had been everything to me, my protector, the guy who taught me the ropes, and even though he wasn't perfect, he was my rock. But, yeah, that's not where the real mess started. Enter my stepmother, Claire. I didn't know much about her when they first got married. I was 14 when they tied the knot, and she seemed nice enough. A little overbearing, sure, but I figured it was just because she was trying too hard to bond with me. In the years that followed, though, we didn't exactly get closer. I mean, she was always there, always smiling and acting like everything was fine, but something about her rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was just the fact that she could never quite live up to the idea of the perfect stepmom we all hear about in stories. Or maybe it was because I could see right through her nice facade. But you know what? I never expected that the moment my dad was gone, she'd reveal the monster underneath. It didn't take long for things to get weird. After the funeral, I stayed at the house for a while, not knowing what to do. I mean, I wasn't in the mood to jump back into work, and I sure as hell didn't want to be alone in an empty apartment. So I hung around, trying to sort my head out, thinking maybe Claire and I could at least be civil for the time being. But nope. That's when I started to notice things. Little things at first, like how Claire seemed to want to take over every single aspect of the house. She'd start making decisions without consulting me about my dad's stuff, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. She'd call me into her office just to talk, but the more we spoke, the more I started to feel like she was trying to manipulate me. You could just tell that she was pushing the boundaries, testing how much she could get away with. But it wasn't until I found that one letter tucked away in the back of my dad's old filing cabinet that everything clicked into place. And trust me, when I read what was written in that letter, my heart dropped straight into my stomach. My blood turned cold, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what kind of person my stepmother was. She wasn't just trying to manage the house. No, she was after something far worse. I can't go into details about the letter right now, I'll save that for later, but let's just say that it confirmed every suspicion I'd ever had about her. And I wasn't about to let her take advantage of me, or my dad's legacy, without a fight. But here's the kicker, Claire had already started telling people her version of the story. She was spinning this whole narrative, making herself out to be the grieving widow trying to hold everything together. But if anyone knew my dad like I did, they'd know that wasn't the case. This wasn't about love or loss for her. This was about control. About taking what she thought was rightfully hers. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. The more I realized I had to act before it was too late. But I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just walk up to her and call her out. She was already playing the victim card, and if I messed this up, it'd be my word against hers. And trust me, I didn't want to give her that chance. So I started digging. Quietly. Subtly. Everything she did had to be under my radar. I had to be patient, waiting for the perfect moment to expose her for who she truly was. And when I finally gathered enough evidence to put all the pieces together, let me tell you, I wasn't about to let her get away with it. But that's just the beginning. What happened next? Well, it changed everything. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was imagining things. But then Claire started to really step up her game. She wasn't just acting weird anymore, she was actively undermining me. It wasn't just little things like rearranging the house anymore. Now, she was trying to make herself the sole authority over my dad's estate. One day, she called me into the living room, all smiles, like nothing was wrong. I knew better, though. She was too calm, too put together. She told me she was handling the legal side of things, that she had already spoken with the lawyer, and that everything would be taken care of. Taken care of? What did that even mean? Don't worry about anything, she said. You're still grieving. Let me handle the paperwork. I'll make sure everything's sorted out properly. I wanted to scream at her right then and there. Properly? This woman had been planning this for months, maybe years, and now she was pretending to be the dutiful stepmom? The whole time, I could feel my heart racing in my chest. I didn't trust her. Not for a second. I already knew that my dad's estate was substantial, something I wasn't supposed to find out for a while, but she was already acting like she was the one in charge. It didn't take long for me to realize she was trying to pull a fast one. You know that gut feeling you get when something just isn't right? That gnawing, sick feeling that tells you to trust your instincts? Yeah, I had that. It was getting stronger by the day. It wasn't until I saw the will that everything clicked. I'd been snooping around my dad's study one night, no real reason other than the fact that it felt like there was something hidden there. I know it sounds shady, but when someone's trying to pull a fast one on you, you do what you have to do. And there it was, tucked between some old papers, all neat and tidy, my dad's last will and testament. I had to fight back the urge to throw up. The moment I opened it, I felt like the ground had been yanked out from under me. There it was, in black and white, Claire was the primary beneficiary. Wait, what? I couldn't believe it. My father, the guy who had always been a little cold but had still cared for me in his own way, had left everything to Claire? No mention of me at all? I thought I might pass out. And that's when I found it, the line that sealed it all. In the small print, my dad had mentioned that he trusted Claire to look after my best interests. Look after my best interests? Are you serious? For the first time in my life, I felt like I was being completely betrayed. Not just by my dad, but by Claire too. This wasn't just about money, it was about control. She wanted to make me feel small, like I didn't matter. Like she was the real family now. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I needed to know how far she'd gone with her lies. What had she told the lawyer? Had she twisted the will? Had she manipulated it somehow? I knew she was sneaky, but this felt like a whole new level. I wasn't going to just sit back and let her bulldoze her way through everything. That's when I started reaching out. Slowly at first, trying to gather pieces. I'd texted a couple of Dad's old friends, tried to talk to the lawyer, anyone who might know more about what was actually going on behind the scenes. And let me tell you, nothing felt right. The lawyer seemed unusually tight-lipped, and one of my dad's friends, who'd always been supportive of me, said something that made my stomach turn. She's good at getting what she wants, you know, he said, casually. But she's not the one your father really trusted, kid. I hope you know that. I could tell that people were scared of Claire. They didn't want to get involved, didn't want to risk crossing her. It made me more determined. If no one else was going to stand up, I would. I wasn't just going to roll over. I wasn't going to let her take everything my dad had worked for, everything he had built, and make it hers. But Claire wasn't making it easy. She was always a step ahead of me, every move more calculated. One evening, I came home to find her sitting in the living room, looking way too comfortable. She barely even acknowledged me when I walked in, too busy on her phone, like she owned the place. Hey, I've been thinking, she said without looking up. We should probably start moving some of the stuff around. You know, the house. The furniture. Maybe change things up a bit. It's time to make this our home now, don't you think? That was the moment I realized how far gone she really was. She was pushing for something bigger than I could have imagined. She was trying to force me out. That was it. There was no way I was backing down now. I had to make my move. I just had to figure out how. The more I thought about it, the more my hands shook. This whole thing, it was beyond messed up. Claire was moving so fast, making decisions as if everything were already hers, and it wasn't just about the house or money anymore. It was like she was trying to erase me, wipe me out of the picture entirely. I was just some annoying obstacle standing between her and what she wanted. But here's the thing, I wasn't some kid anymore. I wasn't that 14-year-old who just had to sit there and deal with the situation. No. I had learned enough in the years since then to know that this wasn't going down without a fight. I had to stay smart. If Claire was going to play dirty, I'd play dirtier. I just needed to be patient, gather evidence, and make sure I had everything locked down before I made my move. It all started with a phone call from the lawyer. I'd been trying to get in touch with him for days, but he kept dodging me. Funny how that works, right? When someone's trying to hide something, they get real good at making excuses. Finally, though, I caught him at a moment when he wasn't busy making other people's lives miserable. "You should be careful, son," he said, his voice shaky. "I'm not sure you fully understand what you're getting yourself into. Claire's she's already taken control of most of the paperwork. And frankly, it'll be tough to challenge it. She's been very convincing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Claire had already gone behind my back, twisted things in her favor, and now the lawyer was trying to talk me out of going up against her? No. Absolutely not. Convincing? I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. "What exactly has she convinced you of?" He paused, like he was trying to find the right words. It was too late for that, though. I knew what was going on. I can't talk more about it," he stammered. "I'm just saying it's going to be tough to prove any of this. She's got everything in place. You're going to need more than just a hunch." His words hung in the air for a moment, like he was trying to guilt me into backing off. But all that did was make me more determined. The guy was just doing his job, I guess, but he clearly had his own reasons for not wanting to get involved. I wasn't going to let him stand in my way. I hung up the phone and immediately started digging deeper. No more waiting around. If Claire thought she could pull this off without anyone noticing, she had another thing coming. I knew I needed to act fast, but I had to be careful. If I made a mistake or tipped her off, she'd shut everything down before I could even get a word in. So I started making plans, silent plans. I wasn't about to let her think she had the upper hand. The next few days were a blur. I spent hours at the courthouse, poring over every document I could find that had anything to do with my dad's estate. I couldn't believe how much paperwork there was. And let me tell you, it was all very carefully crafted. Claire wasn't playing around. She had her hooks in deep. But there were cracks. Little things I could use. I found out that Claire had been secretly changing beneficiary details on some of my dad's accounts, some of which I had access to. She'd made it look like she was doing what my dad wanted, but I found a few discrepancies, too many to be a coincidence. At first, I thought maybe it was just oversight, but I wasn't that naive. The more I looked into it, the more it became clear. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated move. That's why I decided to turn the tables. I reached out to a couple of my dad's old colleagues, people he trusted, guys who had known him before Claire came along. They had stories to tell, and those stories were like pieces of a puzzle that was starting to take shape. The more I pieced together, the clearer the picture became. Claire had been playing the long game. She'd been working behind the scenes for years, setting things up, putting pressure on my dad when he was sick, getting him to change his will, making it seem like it was his decision when in reality she was the one pulling the strings. She thought she had everything under control. But I wasn't about to let her pull this off. I started confronting people in small ways, testing the waters. I'd casually bring up my dad's will in conversation, just to see what people knew. The more I did this, the more I realized how deep Claire's influence ran. People didn't want to talk. They were scared of her. That was when it hit me. If I was going to beat her at her own game, I needed leverage. And I needed to move fast. I wasn't just going to fight this in a courtroom either. I wasn't going to let Claire drag this out, bury me in paperwork, and exhaust me until I gave up. No. I was going to expose her lies. All of them. I had enough proof now. I just needed to figure out the right way to make it all come crashing down. But as the days went on, I could feel the walls closing in. Every time I thought I was one step ahead, she'd do something else to throw me off track. I couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even the people who were supposed to have my back. And Claire? She wasn't backing down. She was getting bolder, more brazen. Her control over everything was tightening. I could feel the pressure building, and it was getting harder to breathe. But there was no way I was going to let her win. The day everything came crashing down felt like any other day at first. I woke up, had my coffee, and told myself it was just another day of waiting. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew one thing: I was done with waiting. I was done with Claire's games, done with her acting like she was the one in charge. I had everything lined up. All the evidence I needed. The discrepancies in the will, the shady account transfers, the people who had come forward with stories of Claire's manipulation, it was all there, wrapped up nice and tight. But I needed to make it count. I couldn't afford to mess this up. I'd arranged a meeting with Claire for later that afternoon. I told her it was just a quick catch-up, nothing special. But the moment she walked into the room, I knew she had no idea what was coming. She was her usual, calm, calculating self. Smiling like she owned the world, acting like everything was still hers. Like she had all the control. I let her talk for a bit. She told me about some new ideas she had for the estate, more plans for the future. She was so confident, so damn sure of herself. And as she babbled on, I just sat there, nodding, waiting, watching. Then, out of nowhere, I cut her off. I think we need to talk about the will. Her face went pale. Just like that, the mask started to crack. What about it? She said, the smile slipping from her face. Her voice was too calm. I knew her well enough to hear the tremble behind it. I've been doing some digging, I said slowly, watching her closely. I know what you've been up to. I know what you've been trying to pull. She stood up straight, her eyes narrowing. The calm facade was gone, replaced with something sharper. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't back down. I couldn't. Oh, I think you do. You've been changing things, haven't you? Moving money around, getting the lawyer on your side. Trying to make it look like my dad wanted you to have it all. I leaned forward. But he didn't, did he? Claire took a step back, her face pale now. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. I could see the panic rising in her eyes, and it felt damn good. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. I wasn't going to let her worm her way out of this one. I reached into my bag and pulled out the papers I'd gathered. Copies of the altered accounts, the missing signatures, the trail of lies she'd told to everyone she could. I slammed them down on the table in front of her. This is what your new plan looks like, I said, my voice barely containing my anger. You didn't just want my dad's money. You wanted everything. His reputation. His legacy. But you forgot one thing, me. For a moment, Claire just stared at the papers, her mind clearly racing. She was trying to think of a way out, trying to find a way to flip the script. But there was no way out. She knew it, and I knew it. "I'll take care of this," she said, her voice colder now, trying to regain some control. "You don't know what you're messing with. This will end badly for you." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You've been playing games for too long, Claire. You should have known I wouldn't just roll over. I'm not some kid anymore, and I'm not going to let you walk all over me." For a second, it looked like she was going to crumble. I could see her eyes darting around, looking for a way out, but there was no escape. She couldn't talk her way out of this one. She'd gone too far. Then, in a flash, her expression hardened again. "You think you can prove any of this? You really think anyone will believe you over me? You don't have the power here." The words hit me like a slap. They were meant to intimidate, to make me doubt myself. But instead of backing down, I leaned in closer, my voice low. "I don't need to prove it to anyone. I'm not playing this game by your rules anymore. I've already talked to the lawyer. And you're going down for this, Claire." Her eyes widened for a split second, and then she snapped. "You think you're going to win? You don't understand how this works." I didn't let her finish. "I don't care how it works. What matters is that I'm not leaving until this is over. And you're going to have to answer for everything you've done. All of it." There was a long, tense pause, and then Claire seemed to deflate. She slumped back into her chair, the fight gone out of her. For the first time in months, I saw her for what she really was, just a scared woman, trying to hold on to something she knew she didn't deserve. I thought I could fix this," she said, almost to herself. "I thought I could make it work." Her voice cracked, just a little, but I could tell she wasn't sorry. She was just desperate. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you tried to steal everything from me," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "This ends now. And you're not getting away with it." It was over. Just like that. The moment she saw that I wasn't backing down, she knew the jig was up. She had no choice but to admit defeat. But the look on her face, the shock, the realization that everything she'd worked so hard for was slipping through her fingers, was priceless. I had finally taken control. It didn't take long for Claire to realize she wasn't going to win. The moment the truth came to light, the people who had been too afraid to speak up before started coming forward, offering their support. Friends of my dad's, old business partners, even some of the staff who worked with him, they all stepped up, one by one, telling the same story. It was the story Claire had tried to bury for so long, how she'd manipulated, lied, and schemed to get what she thought was hers. At first, I didn't know how I felt about it. Part of me wanted to feel victorious, to feel like I had finally gotten my justice. But honestly, it wasn't about winning. It was about taking back what was rightfully mine and honoring my dad's memory. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for my relationship with him, for everything he'd worked for, and for the dignity I knew he would have wanted me to have. As the lawyers got involved, things started to move fast. Claire's carefully crafted facade started to crumble, and with every passing day, it felt like the walls she'd built around herself were being torn down. She tried to fight back, of course. But she wasn't fooling anyone anymore. People who once feared her now saw her for who she truly was, a woman who would stop at nothing to take control of everything, no matter who she hurt in the process. I'll admit, I got a little satisfaction from watching her squirm as the truth came out. But it wasn't the kind of satisfaction I thought I'd get. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about taking back my life, about regaining control. I had spent so much time thinking about how unfair everything was, but in the end, it wasn't just about what I was owed. It was about the lessons I'd learned along the way. One of the hardest things about all of this was watching how people reacted when everything went public. Some people turned their backs on me, too. They didn't want to get involved, didn't want to choose sides. I get it, though. People like Claire know how to manipulate those around them. She had a way of making people feel indebted to her, like they owed her something. But once the truth came out, I realized something important. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll do is stand up for what's right, even when you're standing alone. For a while, I was stuck in this weird limbo. I was trying to figure out how to move forward. Sure, I had my inheritance, but that wasn't what mattered. I didn't want to be stuck in this battle anymore. I wanted to let go, to find peace, to stop being dragged down by all the drama. And then it hit me, I had to stop looking at it as a fight. The moment I started to look at it as me taking back what was mine, I realized that the victory was more about the process than the outcome. It wasn't about Claire losing, it was about me finally owning my own story. I was no longer just a victim in someone else's game. I was in control of my future, and that's worth more than any inheritance. I did what I had to do. I stood my ground, exposed the lies, and got what was mine. But more importantly, I stopped letting Claire and her manipulation define me. I stopped giving her the power to control my narrative. In the end, Claire didn't just lose the estate. She lost the respect of everyone who had once supported her. People started distancing themselves from her. She went from being the woman who had it all, to the woman no one trusted. And honestly, that was enough for me. I didn't need to watch her downfall. I didn't need to see her suffer. But knowing that the truth had come out, that was all I needed. A few months later, I was standing on the balcony of my new place, the sun setting behind the city. I wasn't alone. I had friends and family who truly cared about me, people who'd stuck by me through it all. They were the ones who mattered, not the people who'd been swayed by Claire's lies. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. I knew who I was, and that was enough. In the end, I realized something I hadn't fully grasped before. The inheritance wasn't about the money or the house or the things I thought I was owed. It was about the strength to stand up for myself, to reclaim what was mine, and to never let anyone try to take that from me again. My dad had left me more than money. He'd left me the legacy of resilience, and I was going to carry that forward. So, yeah, Claire tried to take it all. But in the end, I got what was mine, not just the inheritance, but my freedom. And that, my friends, is the real victory.